Magic is hard to balance. Take a look at all the sets you've played, and tell me how many of them you think were happy additions to every format they impacted. Even powered down expansions like Bloom Burrow have huge ramifications on the health of the formats around them. This will always be a game of extremes. However, there's a massive difference between getting a bargain on damage and drawing your entire deck off the back of one card. So great, in fact, that they feel like they no longer play by the rules of the game. They can single-handedly open a Pandora's box of overpowered strategies. We've coined a term for these cards, broken, because playing them makes it feel as if the game isn't functioning properly. Today I want to talk about some of these, and discuss what qualifies a card as broken in Magic. So let's say you want to draw some cards. I know this is the case because you both A, play Magic, and B, have a pulse. Well, normal methods will attempt to slow you down here. Most card draw either requires you to perform costly actions to farm triggers, or pay a decent chunk of mana in order to refill your hand. Even the most efficient ways to pay for cards, like Mind Spring, will have you pay some extra blue mana in addition to X. Magic might be high fantasy, but even here we can't avoid paying our taxes. It's a delicate balance of resources versus costs. And then out of the blue, here comes Ancestral Recall with a steel chair. Like a reverse Mind Spring, 1 mana will net you 3 whole cards rather than the other way around. This is Magic's Pot of Greed. It's one time, the rate is incredible, and the power level is way out of bounds. In a world where Brain Geyser is playable, this thing is an abomination, and Richard Garfield is on record as having had known that before Alpha even released. It throws the contract between cost and benefit entirely out the window, but there's ignoring the contract, and then there's tearing it in half. If 1 mana is too rich for your blood, then maybe you'd like to pay with blood instead. Necropotence, Grizzlebrand, and Yawgmoth's Bargain let you pay the alternative cost of life instead of mana for cards. They take a bit of finagling to get onto the board efficiently, but as soon as you do, have fun gaining access to every single card in your library. Stock up on some drain effects, and you'll be continuing the cycle until your opponent is out of life or you are out of cards. Although bans aren't the only indicator of power level, it's a helpful litmus test to give you an idea of a card's strength. These cards are banned all over the place, and for good reason. But let's say you wanted to pay the mana for a Mind Spring. Who said you had to do that fair? We can make sinful amounts of mana without any effort at all. A normal, good card, like Birds of Paradise, costs 1 mana and gives you 1 extra mana per turn. A little slow for my taste, so how about instead we just go crazy? Black Lotus takes a single card and converts it directly into 3 colored mana. No catch. Take Opening Hands where you have something busted for 4 mana, and the Lotus plus 1 land will get you off to the races. Although Lotus is the kingpin, there are a bunch of cards that can do a pretty good impression. The Moxen are just lands that you can play as many as you want of in 1 turn. Then Mana Vault, Soul Ring, and Mana Crypt all go positive and lead to turn 7s being played out on turn 1. You may have noticed that all of these cards are artifacts, so in any format where they're even remotely legal, they like to roll around together and create meta-defining decks that play around artifact synergies. If anything's scarier than broken cards, it's broken cards that get stronger together. Let's say you want something that's not an artifact though. Dark Ritual is like Mana Vault as an instant. If you're ever worried about running out of cards playing all these accelerants, don't be. A single Dark Ritual can pay for a Necropotence all on its own. Just grab 10 life and fill up immediately. One of the best of these might be Channel. Like Yawgmoth's Bargain, but for mana, you can spend your life as a resource to pull way ahead and put so much mana into your pool that it overflows. Better bring them up for both your mana and the tiers of the guy you're playing against. But accelerating our mana implies we plan to pay for things. What if we just don't? Cheat cards decide to go around costs rather than through them. If Channel is a battering ram, these are a backdoor. Flash is the prime example. It lets you put something onto the battlefield at instant speed, but if you don't pay the difference in mana, then you sacrifice it. Oh no! If only there was a big expensive creature that didn't need to stick around and won the game when it died. If only. Sneak Attack does a similar job, but works repeatedly and gives you the chance to use your creatures in combat at the expense of more mana. Show and Tell feigns ignorance of how broken it is by pretending it's giving your opponent something too. Just Ignore the fact that theirs is an Ocelot Pride, and yours is Emrakul, the Promised End. And then finally, Tinker and Natural Order ask you to make a very fair trade. You can ditch an artifact or creature respectively to go grab one from your deck and put it into play. Who needs mana costs? Llanowar Elves turning into a turn 3 Progenitus is exactly what Richard Garfield intended. Okay, let's talk about a couple of outliers. Time Walk. It's hard to put quantifiable costs to subjective benefits. Pricing out how much one damage should cost is one thing, but an extra turn is a lot more ephemeral as a benefit. Although putting a cost to this is tough, I think we can go with our guts on when we get it wrong. Time Walk got it super duper wrong. 2 mana is so undercosted for an extra turn that you can only play a maximum of 1 copy of this card in any format. Also, there are no protections on this thing. You don't exile it as it resolves, so with the simplest synergies, you can just loop Time Walk over and over and over again. Hilarious. If Time Walk got the answer wrong, then Time Vault got the answer wrongest. It's supposed to let you skip a turn now, so that you can bank that turn for later. The problem is that it does this by not untapping naturally, and then skipping a turn lets you untap it. So without safety measures, anything that manually untaps the vault would be able to force an extra turn into the bank. It's a really good thing then that there are no cards like that. Oh, wait, there's tons. With any of these, or their many redundancies, you can force the vault to untap every single turn. And then, when the payoff for doing so is gaining another turn, yeah, you see where this is going. For the low price of 2 mana, you can turn your game of Magic into a game of Solitaire. Seems broken to me. Last one I want to cover is Yawgmoth's Will. Between his will and his bargain, I'm starting to think this Yawgmoth guy might be a problem. It lets you play every card in your graveyard this turn, but they get exiled if they return there. Seems pretty fair on first glance, you have to pay their mana costs and stuff, but it's the synergies that maketh the game break. Yawgmoth's Will is nowhere near balanced in any format with lots of fast mana. The 0 mana rocks we talked about earlier are already overpowered on their own, think about how much worse they get in multiples. A Black Lotus used to cast the Will can then be recast to pay for something else, essentially making the Will free. Then you begin to stick your dead mana rocks and cast 1,000 spells with all the mana you make. Eventually, you'll convert this into a win with a Storm payoff, all out of your graveyard. Does your opponent have some way of stopping this line of play? Don't worry, all of the counter spells you've used over the course of the game are in your graveyard too, ready to defend your combo. How nice of them. This makes Yawgmoth's Will more powerful in Eternal formats with fewer restrictions. You can see this reflected in its ban rate. Totally fine in Commander, where you have less fast mana and less consistency, but a boogeyman in the much faster Legacy and Vintage. This one probably could have used a bit more development. So what do these have in common? What turns an upstanding citizen of a card into a delinquent with no regard for the game's health? I think that this comes down to a number of factors. 1. The card exchanges resources too easily. There are a great many cards on this list that allow you to convert something into something else. Black Lotus costs you a card to produce 3 mana, which is an insane exchange rate, especially on turn 1. The rest of the rocks have a similar issue, and together they accelerate you toward the event horizon of playing your entire combo before your opponent even gets to take a turn. Broken cards can also produce resources against the grain. What I mean by this is, the resources of Magic are not created equal. In your average game, the 3 resources to contend with are cards, mana, and life. This is also the ordering of their value. As evidenced by Mindspring, a card is worth more than 1 mana, and as we know from Phyrexian mana, 1 mana is worth so much more than 1 life. This gives us an idea of the hierarchy of resources when weighed against each other. Many of the cards we talked about today reverse this hierarchy. They can jump up the ladder at a 1-for-1 rate or better. For example, Ancestral Recall trades 1 mana to go positive 2 cards. This alone breaks Ancestral. Channel reverses the bottom portion, letting you pay 1 life for 1 mana. But if channel is a misdemeanor, then Yawgmoth's bargain is a felony. Just jumping backwards isn't enough, it needs to hop all the way to the beginning on, again, a 1-for-1 basis. Unless your rate is much, much worse than these ones, reversing the value of resources is a good way to become a broken game piece. 2. The card is either old or lacked proper research and development. Time Walk is a victim of this. When you're creating the first set of cards for a game you have freshly designed, it's hard to know exactly how to price things out. It's easy now to say that an extra turn should cost 5 mana, but that's after benefiting from 30 years of tinkering and many stabs at the idea. With much, much more design time and experience, it might have been possible to know something was gravely amiss with Time Walk, but I'm not sure that was high on the list of priorities at the time, compared to, figuring out how to print and distribute an entire card game. This issue especially plagues cards with unique and complicated effects. It's a lot easier to make a called shot on whether a 1-mana vanilla creature is balanced than it is to put a price tag on whatever the heck Vivi is doing. The younger the game is, the higher the percentage of novel and unique effects, because they were being done for the first time, and the more issues they had in R&D. Inversely, the newer the card is, the more thinly WotC's design team is stretched over many products, and the less R&D time each card gets. This is a mess, but it's a mess by choice. Wizards can turn down the rate of products anytime they want, they just choose not to. And 3. The card lacks necessary restrictions to reign in its power. Time Vault is the subject of about 1,000 erratas because of this issue. With just 1 or 2 more lines of text, it can function as intended rather than printing infinite turns. That version of the card might be unplayable garbage, but my point is that the solution is simple, even if uninteresting. Sometimes the restrictions are in place, but they're half measures that don't do enough. A great example of this is with Yawgmoth's Will and Underworld Breach. Breach is obviously a riff on the will, but adding Breach's escape cost means you'll have a harder time vomiting up fast mana. The issue is they removed Yawgmoth's Will's exile clause, so this iteration just ended up enabling other degenerate playstyles instead. So now, whenever someone tries to tell you that the newest flavor of the week spoiler card is the most broken thing they've ever seen in their life, you now have some tools to begin picking that statement apart. Does it trade resources or cheat them? Does it reverse the resource chain? Does it have an obvious safety valve someone forgot to close? If not, then their worries might be a bit hyperbolic. But if it's got all 3, you know what we call that? Playing Magic in 2026. Thanks, Wizards. If you have a favorite card that's broken in half, then please, share it down in the comments below. This video could have been 2 hours long, listing things like Nadu and the One Ring, but I have to sleep at some point, so I'm going to leave that to you guys. If you got some value out of this video, then I'd appreciate it if you liked it or shared it with a friend. I don't advertise the channel anywhere, so word of mouth is the only way I grow. If you liked the format of this video, then subscribe to be in the loop when I upload. Maybe. YouTube is quirky sometimes. I have a Discord you can join where we get together for game nights, and a Blue Sky where I complain about my favorite game. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.